Hello, everybody. It's been a while since I have talked about anything related to The Witcher and Netflix, but I'm here now. I'm here with Stormbeard, aka Chris, and Bijan, aka Uslebard, and we're going to do a little discussion about The Witcher Netflix season 3. I used to just do kind of like episode breakdowns and like my own personal talks about The Witcher Netflix, but I found that I enjoy doing these more when I do it more in a discussion format with my friends. And so if I was like, I'm not going to actually do this unless I just get in a call with my friends and talk about it. And we do that anyway with a lot of shows that we watch. So I was like, let's just record it and talk about season 3 a little bit. And of course, before we get into this, of course, there's going to be spoilers for season 3 part 1, I should say, because it's only half the season that's come out at the time of recording this. So we'll only be talking about the first 5 episodes. There will be spoilers for that. We won't get into too much spoiler territory for stuff that hasn't been revealed yet in the books. We maybe, if we talk about it a little bit, I will say like book spoilers beforehand, but any of the content that's been in the show but also in the books, we will free reign to talk about that, but anything that might not yet be revealed, we will make sure to tag a spoiler before, so you can mute it for a second, and so you don't get spoiled. So, all right, let's just get into this and talk about it. I guess just what's the overall thoughts of the first half of the season so far? Did we like it? Did we not like it? Bijan, I'm going to start with you, and then Chris, I'll go to you.
So just to be simple, I liked it.
Yeah.
I thought it.
Yeah.
I liked it. I'm not going to say that I didn't have issues with it. And also, I still think season 1 far and away is the best season. I do think some of the stuff that it suffers from, also the books suffer from, like the same critiques that I would make for the show, I would make for the books at this point. But they did a lot better than season 2. I liked it.
Yeah.
I overall liked it.
What about you, Chris?
So I enjoyed it. I wouldn't say liked it. I liked it better than season 2. You can definitely see where they go from. Like season 2, it was all linear, and they kind of like the Witcher stories are a bunch of smaller stories. And that's where, season 1 is and season 3 is, and season 2 they kind of went like on a linear line and kind of changed some big things in season 2 that I think a lot of people weren't too happy with. And you can see where they kind of bounced back and forth between we need to make this long or we need to make this more short story-ish. So I liked it more than season 2. I think it was pretty good, but to mimic Bijan, season 1, fantastic.
Yeah.
This season 3 is then in second place, and season 2 is in third currently.
Yes. So I also I enjoyed it. I honestly, this is what I said. I said this in my Discord, but my expectations going into this were low, and that's why I came out pleasantly surprised. Because honestly,
in the gutter.
Honestly, yeah. Like I was going in, and that's kind of an interesting thing. Sometimes when you go into something, when you expect it to be good, it ends up being bad, and you get disappointed. And when you go into things expecting it to be bad, and it ends up kind of good, you're like, wow. So maybe I'm hyping it up more than I should, just because I honestly, between season 2, I was not a fan of, and then honestly, even Blood Origin, when that just came out during Christmas, this past Christmas, I think we all talked about that one when it first came out, and I didn't even bother doing any video discussions on it because it was just forgettable to me. Like it was not good. It was, I don't even remember the characters, the 7, the Song of the 7, which they reference in this. And I was like, oh yeah, that's from Blood Origin, but I don't even remember who the 7 are. So
I think the contrast definitely has an effect on my, if season 1 was as at the quality level of season 3 when it came out, I don't know if I would be as excited about the show in general.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like I said, like I like it, but a lot of that is it returning to some of the things that season 1 set up rather than it doing a really great job on its own there. Sorry, my
Yeah.
audio
Yeah,
got a
I
little
was like,
weird
I
for a
heard a little
second.
crackly there. Yeah. I was like, is that on me? But yeah, no, I agree. And so I guess like we can talk a little bit about like just some of the big things. Like there's only 5 episodes so far. And like going through just very quickly trying to remember like from episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like the beginning of this, it starts with Geralt, Yennefer, and Ciri as a little family, and then it kind of ends at Thaned in Aretuza, and I guess we could start kind of at the beginning and just kind of go through some of the things. Like, what were you guys' thoughts at the beginning there with like Geralt, Yennefer, and Ciri? I had thought that I was like, man, because obviously season 2 ended with Yennefer doing some things that I don't think any of us are really a fan of. Not, a lot of people were not a fan of.
A lot of people did a lot of things that we weren't a fan of in
Yes,
season 2.
yes. Yennefer, Vesemir, everybody, even Ciri when she gets freaking possessed or whatever. So, but it starts like with them kind of as a family, but Geralt is clearly like on a no speaking terms with Yennefer, and they did like the
Yeah.
whole dear friend thing where she's writing letters and everything, and I like it was like kind of montagey, and I when at first I was like, okay, I wasn't like super into it. But I also was
Hmm.
glad that it wasn't dragged out that like Geralt is mad at Yennefer, and I was like, if we're gonna have to deal with this like for multiple episodes, I'm gonna be pissed. So I'm kind of
Yeah.
glad that they made it more like montagey.
I agree with that completely. I think that there were things that I liked about seeing that, but it was a little heavy-handed. And what I didn't like about it was what it kind of changes for the implication of this sort of found family dynamic between Ciri, Geralt, and Yennefer. Now, without going too much into the books and the differences in the books in the future, at this point in the book, they don't spend this much time together. And
Yeah.
while the family dynamic is a thing in the books, a lot of that is sort of through Ciri. It's kind of like
Hmm.
Geralt and Ciri have a relationship, Yennefer and Ciri have a relationship, and Yennefer and Geralt have a very contentious relationship. And part of what I think is interesting about that is there's a big question of whether they love each other with the whole Jin
Mm-hmm.
situation, and it's a big part of their love story is, do they really believe these feelings are true? And what's kind of interesting is uh them feeling this family dynamic because of the love they have through Siri. They know that that's real, and that kind of brings them together in a different way that transcends this question of whether this love between each other is real. I think this kind of dilutes that a little bit when they spend this family time together. Even though it's not like I hated it, but I generally echo your feelings. I think this is the weakest part of the show for this season. I think it starts off weaker with this, with this opening.
Yeah, and it's it was one of those things where it's like it's alluded that it's months long,
Mm.
because they're going from hideout to hideout, different seasons and different biomes and stuff like that. And I didn't like how it was kind of resolved, like Yennefer just being like, "I'm out of wine. Ooh, what are you cooking? Come on in." Like
Yeah.
it just felt kind of like Yennefer would have did that like day 2. She wouldn't
Mm.
have just stood by and just been like and lived by herself. It was just kind of like, oh, yeah, that's classic Yennefer, but also it was kind of like, that's it. Like he just like lets
Yeah.
her in and forgives her, and for the whole
Yeah.
Volithmere thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so I liked the the exploration factor of it, going to the different areas. But like Bijan said, it was definitely the weakest, and Tracy, to agree with you, it was like, oh, how long are they gonna do this? How long are there gonna be these letters that are knived into his door?
Yeah.
So it was heavy handed because of that, but it did
Yes.
serve the purpose of getting it done. Like I agree with you,
Yes.
Tracy. Like they got over it, and there was some value in showing that. Like they did a good job of setting up this family dynamic between them, which is important. Like that does need to happen in the show in some way, I think.
Yes, I agree. And the show surprisingly does do a good job of doing that family dynamic more than even like the books in some ways. Like they show, at least we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but like the fact that Geralt, Yennefer, and Ciri got to have dinner together and stuff like that. Like that's like something that we don't see too much of in the books. And I was like, oh, it's kind of cool that they're doing this for the show. And honestly, like family as a theme is honestly a big thing in this season, honestly in the show in general, which I like this family theme because we also like see this later when Geralt meets that druid who was friends with his mother Vicenna, and like even Tesea's relationship with Yennefer as like a motherly kind of figure. Like there's definitely like a lot of like family themes in the show, and I surprisingly like that part of the show. And I like the way they handle it. So yeah.
I think those themes are a big part of the books, and I think that the show, like you mentioned Tisea, this is where sometimes the show does a better job than the books,
Yep.
in my opinion, of
Yep.
showing these themes. And I really love Tisea, and I really love Yennefer and Tisea's relationship, and that is something that is better. One of a couple of examples of characters that are expanded upon and done better in the show, in my opinion, overall, especially talking season one, but in general.
Yep.
I want to take that opportunity to then pivot to talking about Dandelion for a second, because he is a character that I no longer enjoy in this show.
Wait, really?
And have not since season 2.
Oh man.
Okay.
And maybe that might be my biggest hot take here, because I love the actor Joey Beatty, right?
Yep.
I think that's his name. I love the Amazing Devil band project that he's
Yes.
in. I am a fan of how he does Yaskier, and I love Yaskier season 1. I do not think anything of his performance but good things. But they kind of turned him into a Marvel sidekick, and he kind of has lost any opportunity for depth. I think he wisecracks at every single opportunity. And while they did make a big improvement of putting him back together with Geralt, which is, I think, a really important thing for his character, I think a lot of the mistakes that they've made with him in the previous season was him not being paired up with Geralt. And there were some moments that I really enjoyed of them together, some lines that work, but it's the overall vibe of him. Like, he is never off anymore. And he serves to just be annoying because of the quips he says, instead of this relationship between him and Geralt having this fundamental tension between who Dandelion is, somebody that, has these proclivities and these needs for fineries, and this clashes with who Geralt is, and this creates some tension and some comedy and some drama. But at the end of the day, Geralt ends up sticking up for him because Dandelion always makes the right decision, and he shows up and he does the right thing at the right time, and that's what Geralt values. I don't see this relationship displayed anymore. I just see this wisecracking, jokey caricature that I am not really a
Yeah.
fan of anymore.
Yeah. That's interesting. I can't say that I didn't like Jaskier in this season. I did like it. I actually feel like he was a bit more useful this season. Although I will say I didn't understand in the first episode him being the bait. I was like, what?
Yeah,
that
was.
yeah, that didn't really like make sense to me. I was like, how is he like? He went with Ciri, and I was like, how is he the bait?
Yeah, and they even mention I forget the dwarven character's name.
Yarpin.
Yarpin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When Geralt and Yennefer are like, Ciri's gonna go with Yarpin's caravan to get Riance to attack them and like show his face. But don't worry, we'll be like close by. And then Yarpin's like, well, why would he come for my caravan? And it's like, oh, she'll have a bodyguard, and it's like Dandelion. Like, who cares about Like, he's
Yeah.
like, it's not a bodyguard,
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I thought they were gonna go somewhere like totally different. Like I don't know. Like uh I whoever's left at Kaer Morhen now out of the Witchers after season 2, like something like that. And then of course like he's getting thrown out by like a woman like the next scene, and you're like, oh, it's Dandelion. But then like during the attack, like he gets shot in the loot. Like it's not like he has any like character growth from being the bait. And then Yennefer and
Yeah.
Geralt are like sleeping in the camp, so they're not really like outside of the caravan. It was just like it was a very ham-fisted way to like get Yaskir back in the show, I felt.
Yeah.
And then going on to the big things with Yaskir and another character, which I'm sure we'll have to talk about in a little bit. Yeah, and it even like the whole thing at like Codringer and Fen was also weird.
Yeah.
Oh,
Which
yeah?
also I did not like their ending. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
It was a
yeah.
very that was another thing. But
That-
if we're sticking
Well,
on
that
Yaskir,
was coming though, right? Isn't that book accurate?
They do.
What happened there?
Yes.
kind of there's 3 assassins that get sent to deal with Codringer and Fen.
Yeah.
Riance
Yeah.
just doesn't show up and just ignites their shop.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did kind of skip to the end there. And
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
but yes, I don't dislike Dandelion or Yaskir, who whatever you want to call him now. But it was very like he's the bait ? Like for that whole like caravan thing.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Like honestly, so like as far as like episode 1 goes, like going back to that, like I would say like this show, like the first 2 seasons, like usually they're like pilot episode, like the episode 1 is always like to me like the strongest episode that hooks you in. Like season 1, they had the Renfrey Butcher of Blaviken story, which
So good.
was like that was like the perfect episode to like pull you into the story. Whether
like,
you
this is Geralt.
Yes.
Like this is
and even for people like whether you're like a fan of the not you don't know anything about the books or the games, like this will hook you in. And also for people who are fan, like this will like holy shit, like it hooks you in, like that one. And then honestly, episode 2 or season 1, episode 2, the Nivellen story, like that, like, which was sad because when I first watched it, I was like, oh man, this is amazing. And I thought it was going to set up for a good season. But that was such a good episode. honestly, one of the best
Season
episodes.
2, episode 1, right?
Yes.
I think you might have said the
Yes.
opposite.
Oh yeah. Season 2, episode 1, the Nivellen
Yeah.
story was so good. But this one, season 3, episode 1 was like, was not, I thought they were going to take elements of one of the other short stories, Sherowed. The episode is literally called Sherowed, which is the elven ruins with
Yeah.
Ailoren, which they did reference. And honestly took a totally different, because that's in Blood of Elves. So they took like a whole different like take on Sherowed, like, which is fine. It's
fine.
It's one of my
Right?
favorite
Yeah.
parts of Blood of Elves, mind you. But it was like, I was like, it's fine. Like, but it didn't capture any essence of like a tale or a story. It was just kind of like a mess of things happening with Riance and all of that. And I don't know.
So this may be a good opportunity to talk then about what I think is an interesting transition that happens in the books as well, which is like if you read the books, it starts with a bunch of short stories and then transitions into this novel, which has a different tone because the short stories, while they are revolving around these same characters, are often more fantastical. They're a little bit more fairy tale like. They're about monster hunting, right? This is something where I think the game does a really amazing job. Like what hooks me in when I play in the game, that it makes me feel like that feels like the short story Witcher a lot of the times, like the day-to-day playing of the video game. And where season 1 also really captured this vibe because they were doing these disparate tellings of these different stories. And in season 2, the show had this same issue where they switch into this linear mode of telling the tale. I think this is a problem in the books too. Well, depending on I personally enjoyed it when I was reading the books, but other people that I know, when they maybe stopped reading The Witcher halfway through, this is often where they stop reading.
Yep.
They start reading the first of the actual novels. They might finish it or they might not, and that is usually where if they're going to jump off, they feel like it's a big tonal shift.
Yep. Time of Contempt is where I first fell off as well. Honestly, probably my least favorite book of all of them is Time of Contempt. It has some banger scenes, but overall as a book, it is so slow and boring. So is Blood of Elves is pretty slow and boring too. It takes a while, I think, for Andrzej Sapkowski to really get into the meat and potatoes of what we want to see in The Witcher. I do like some of the political stuff, so I personally enjoy it. But yes, it is. The books are not perfect either. So I know when people are like, "Oh, the show doesn't capture some parts of the book," I'm like, honestly, not Baptism, sorry, but Time of Contempt and Blood of Elves are not that strong of books. So
they have their hurdles.
They're very politic heavy.
They are.
And so it's they're definitely slow burners.
Yeah.
I think talking about Jaskier, I think I want to springboard into the whole Radovid.
Yes.
Radovid question mark?
Yes.
Whole aspect of
yes,
because
that does get we meet Radovid, I think, in the first episode, and then the second episode as well, when Jaskier is playing the song, playing the tune for him and his little entourage.
Yeah.
And in that moment, it's Jaskier was singing. And there's the scene of Radovid watching him intently, and then they start talking in the other room, and I was like, oh my God, the chemistry between the two. I was like, is this going where I think it's going? And sure enough, it did.
yeah. And for the show, Radovid is the brother of Vizimir.
Yeah.
Instead of the son.
That confused me.
Which was a choice. And again, I don't know why. That to me, that is one of those ones that some things that they change, I'm like, okay, I can see why they changed. But this, I'm like, why did they make him the brother? I don't get it.
And then this whole I kind of equate it to this whole Littlefinger thing going on, where he plays kind of simple and dumb, but he's actually not. He's actually smart and conniving,
yes.
Machiavellian villain type thing. And so Radovid and Dandelion romance wasn't on my bingo card whatsoever this
mine
this
either.
And so I just I know it's not real. It's all for espionage and to gain information.
Although
I don't think it's real at all. And I think
it seemed, I think Jaskier was he seemed to be contemplating it a little bit,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And he even says when he's in bed with, and the woman is outside, and he's he has a crush on him.
Yes.
And she's like, Jaskier, a crush on someone? That hasn't happened in decades or years. I forget what she says exactly, and he's thinking about this guy. And I was like, wait, is this real?
Yeah.
Is Jaskier and Radovid actually happening?
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest head scratchers of this season, I felt.
Yeah.
Who also doesn't think that Jaskier doesn't who thinks that Jaskier doesn't have crushes?
I know.
Yeah, absolutely. There's another thing that I don't remember what it said where Jaskier said, "I don't do pretty," and I was like, since when?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
This is true. And honestly, I'll quickly bring this up because I know this is a point of contention, and just in general, a thing that I think people do when they look at the show, and then they look at the books, and then they look at the games. Everybody has their own ways of how they separate all three of them, whether it's I am going to treat this piece, I'm going to treat the show as its own canonical thing. I'm going to treat the books and the show. I'm going to compare the books and the show and the game. And I'm not saying what's right or wrong. Anybody can interpret anything, any piece of media the way they want. But I do think for most people, we're very heavily influenced by the games because of how all of these characters are portrayed in the video games. And there's nothing wrong with that. We owe a lot to CD Projekt Red because these are good Polish fantasy books, but I don't think an American publisher may have looked at The Witcher and be like, I'm going to make a game out of this. But for a Polish company like CD Projekt Red to be like, I'm going to make a video game series about this epic Polish fantasy, makes sense. And it did really well, and now we all love it. And like, I think like people often look at like how Radovid is in the show, and then they think about the game Radovid, and they're like, oh, this is so weird. Like, this is not like the Radovid I know. And it's like, I personally, and this goes for a lot of the character choices, like like I don't mind too much that they make these decisions in the show that like maybe we wouldn't expect for like the Radovid in the games to do, or even the Dandelion in the games, which honestly, Dandelion, I like in the books, he mostly talks about women. I always assume he would also sleep with men. And then like in the game, there's that one quest that you do where you have to find all of Dandelion's girlfriends. And one of them is an elf man, a cross-dressing elf man. So it's like, in my mind, like if you're going by like the game logic, like I would say, yes, Jaskier canonically sleeps with men and women. Radovid, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if he, so yeah.
That never so that never bothers me to make those choices. I am generally in favor of making choices that are different, as long as they don't change the, important themes or motifs. Like, I don't need things to be exactly the same. I will say though that having the game be my introduction to the Witcher universe, I am guilty of those biases.
Yeah.
So like, I'm not saying that that's not in a vacuum, like that isn't a vacuum. That totally affects me. And I think I had a very strong reaction to Radovid because of what I envision him from the books. So seeing him or from the game. So seeing him in the show, even though I do agree with Chris's assessment that I think they're going to show him as being conniving. I think this is an act. They've heavily implied that it is too, right? I think was it Philippa or Dijkstra that calls him out on it at one point? One of them does, right? So, I mean, but it does affect me heavily. And so my initial reaction to Radovid was like, isn't that Radovid the Stern? Isn't that what they called him?
Yeah.
Like,
Doesn't he hate mages and, spoiler alert, like, doesn't he cut out Philippa's eyes? Like,
Yeah.
Doesn't he do crazy, like, he's crazy hardcore, isn't right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
for what it's worth, I love the Radovid of the games. I think he's a great character, and that CD Projekt Red did a great job with Radovid's character. And yes, this is just like a very staunch difference from.
If it wasn't so stark, I don't think I'd have that reaction, but it does happen. So like, if I take a step back and analyze it just from the perspective of comparing the books and the show, which technically nothing in the game, the show doesn't owe anything to the game as far as allegiance of, like, they are adapting the books. That is what they have set out to do. So they have to make their own choices, right? But I can't deny that it doesn't affect my opinion on the outset. Like, I had a hard time with Radovid at first, but once you get into it, it works.
Yeah.
I liked it. I didn't think, and I thought, I think the actors did a good job pulling off their scenes. They had good chemistry and banter.
Yeah.
They did a good job.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
I was gonna say the one thing that was interesting to me for Philippa and Dijkstra was the whole kind of like sadomasochism.
Oh yeah.
Scene.
Okay.
I was
another
like,
one was like, that's a choice. Yeah.
That's a choice.
I'll buy it though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just didn't get it. I didn't understand why it was in there. Like, it's like, oh, is Philippa the one like wearing the pants in this relationship?
And she kind of is in the books. So
yeah, but they really drove it home with that scene. It was one of those where I was like, "Ooh, okay."
Yeah,
there you go.
It was an interesting choice to add to that. But I assume that was just them trying to show, yes, that Philippa is like the baddest bitch, and Dijkstra is like, he's good and he has his own things, like his own things with like power and like trying to figure shit out. But yes.
I love Philippa. Can I say I love the witches in the show? They've cast them so well.
Yes.
I know, there are some ridiculous aspects about them. I think the party scene. Okay, I want to talk about this scene. I love this scene in the book, and I think they did such a good job in the show. I really really enjoyed that. It showed off a lot of great aspects of the witches and their culture, the brotherhood, the mages. Uh, I loved the crazy outfits that they were wearing. I don't know why Philippa looked like she was a Vegas showgirl, but
Yeah.
It was like an owl,
was
like an owl.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
her whole owl motif.
Yeah, there was
True,
all.
yeah.
I think all of her costume designs had little nods to her
Feathers,
her
yeah.
feathers, or polymorph to owl. Yes, there was actually like I've seen some complaints back and forth about the costume design for this season. Some people like were really not happy. I think there was some like really high moments for the costume design and some like low moments.
I would agree with that.
Yeah,
Yeah, also agree.
I would say it's like not perfect, but I do think there were some really great costumes. Like I do think a lot of Philippa's like outfits slayed. But some of
yeah, Philippa
Yennefer's
was awesome.
didn't.
One of the ones that made me chuckle was I think it was episode 1 where they go to like the Yarpin's like May parade.
Oh, the
U-Ball.
Bellatin,
Yeah.
which
The
yes,
Bellatin,
Bellatin,
yes.
which
The
where
Bellatin.
yay,
And it
series,
was like-
yeah,
Yeah, and you
series
have
and Yen's birthday,
exactly, yes, and then you have
her
like,
original.
Siri, wear a mask.
Oh, yeah.
And, go under the radar, and they pull up, and Yennefer's wearing her outfit. From
All
season
reliable,
1.
you
All
gotta
reliable.
pull
Yeah.
out all reliable to get Geralt back.
Geralt just has like a cloak and hood on.
Yeah.
And Ciri has this mask on a stick, and then it's like she walks in with it, and then she's like, "All right, I'm running away," and
Yeah.
takes it off, like totally.
I remember I was saying they were like, oh, we have to be like inconspicuous, and I'm like, they look like they're cosplaying themselves. Like, what is going on?
I know.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, that was one of those where I was just kind of like, oof, like that's.
Yeah.
I wish they would have had a little bit better than that.
Yeah, yeah. I did like that they put in the Bellatin Festival and everything too.
Me too.
But going back to the source, actually, just going back, let's just talk about like our characters that we liked the most. Because I do want to shout out because we started talking about Philippa and Dijkstra. They are my favorite characters in the books. Philippa specifically is my favorite character in both the books and the games. And so I was like, if this show is gonna suck, if anything, just give me a good Philippa. Like that's all I ask. She's my favorite
so
character, and
So
honestly, she slayed.
Yeah.
And she nailed Philippa. Like, absolutely was obsessed with her. Love her. She was so good, and I really liked her relationship with Dijkstra. I think Dijkstra is a little different in the show than he is in the books, but he's still good. And Graham McTavish is like a great
kills it.
Dijkstra. Yeah.
Yeah.
He felt a little softer, but then that
Yes.
moment when he makes his move.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
When
Yes.
When he
kills
delivers
the queen,
the head, yeah.
when he delivers like that, and I was like, that's Dijkstra. Like they nailed it.
Yeah.
So I whatever aspect that I felt like maybe they had sugarcoated him a little, or they maybe put Philippa as maybe too capable, like maybe the power dynamic was a bit shifted, not in his favor. At that moment, I was like, ooh,
Yeah.
all right. Yeah, this is not a man to be trifled with. And I
Yep.
was like, that's Dijkstra. That's a really
Yeah.
good.
Yep.
Really loved that scene. It was
I-
really good.
I did like that. I wasn't fully expecting that to happen, actually, because again, this isn't something that happens in the books, like them killing the queen. Some people actually are like, saw some people saying that like that actually is not something Dijkstra would do because it's too like he's more subtle as a Redanian spy, and like this was like a very overt like thing. But I
True.
personally,
Okay.
I didn't mind. I thought it was kind of cool. Like honestly, I
Yeah.
was like,
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I agree with Bijan where I thought of him as quite soft, and then he plays that card, and I was like, damn, all
Yeah,
right, this
yeah.
this is Dijkstra.
Yeah,
But,
I think
yeah.
it was needed to show how much of a player he is as well. So
Yes.
like, man, the minute that little chest got delivered, that box, I was like, I think I know it's gonna be in there.
There's a head in that box.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah,
I really liked the evolution of Istrid.
yeah.
That was one that I wasn't expecting.
Agreed. Istrid's playing
Yeah.
that's another character where Istrid's such a minor character in the books, and he's playing a much bigger role
Yes.
in the show.
He has the one short story.
A Shard of Ice, yeah.
Yeah, where they have that like
that little
fight
fight.
that fight scene, and I wonder if they thought like, hey, what if we just put the fight scene? Like, what if we
Yeah.
just throw that? Like, the part of me thinks that was the impetus for that whole distraction. Was like,
I was like,
what if
there's a
we
Shard of
did
Ice right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I love that short story because they
I hate that
all
short
act
story.
like my wife does too, but I love
hate
it because at the end of it, Yennefer's just like, I hate you both. You both suck. And she just walks away from both of them. And that's what I love about the short story is that they're both idiots.
Yeah. Yeah. Istrid was great. We saw like a lot of like the thing and The Witcher in general just has a ton of like characters that you have to follow, and that's I love like all the characters, so like I have no issue with it. I know some people are like, there's a lot of characters, and I think even like this season, like it's if you like aren't familiar, like even like watching the first two seasons, like man, there's a lot of moving parts I have to keep up with. Like we had a couple of moments of Fringilla after her excommunicado from Nilfgaard, which I'm sure that's building up to something for the second half, but it really wasn't much for this first half. It was just kind of like, oh yeah, Fringilla, she exists.
She's not dead.
Yeah, exactly. Kahir, though. My boy Kahir.
Yeah, what did we think about Kahir? Because I am a Kahir fan.
Me too.
In the books. There is a dynamic that is coming. I hope.
Yes.
I don't want to spoil anything,
Yep.
but there is a dynamic with Kahir and other characters that I'm very excited for, and it looks like we're on track for that, and I'm very excited to see that.
Yeah. What did you guys think about the Nilfgaard scene and like Kahir returning to Emir, and then Emir basically like, you want to like kill this poor Scoia'tael boy, Gallatin. What did you guys think of that whole thing?
I thought it was great.
Yeah.
I thought it was awesome. That is pure Kahir, just anything to please Emir and no questions asked, and I liked it. I enjoyed it, and I'm glad to see he's back in the in Nilfgaard and doing his thing.
Yeah. Big fan of Emir right now. I'm enjoying. There's a big aspect of the books.
Papa.
There's something in the books when you talk about Nilfgaard and Emir, and they're doing a good job with it in the show, which is like really the only bad thing about Nilfgaard is the fact that one, they're trying to get Ciri, and you're like there's that is definitely like awful. But if you're not invested in that story, let's say you like take a step back, like it's just that they're invading, right? But life in Nilfgaard is seemingly much better than life elsewhere. They talk about treating the different races better.
Yes.
I guess, well, maybe unless you're a mage, I think maybe it's not so great to be a mage in Nilfgaard. But, it seemed like there was more like social programs, like people were fed, people were not worried about corruption or an evil boot on their neck when it came to living their lives.
Yeah.
So that I feel like they are kind of setting that up very well in the show as well. I love seeing when they talk about Nilfgaard and then cutting to the ruthlessness of him and what he's willing to do, and you show like no, he's not. None of them are good, but in a society where everybody's doing awful things and nobody's above being ruthless.
Yeah.
It does kind of
It's
make that a little bit of an interesting discussion.
Yeah, like I've always seen, like, yes, the thing about The Witcher to me, is, and this is like, Geralt always takes a neutral ground, and he definitely does that a lot in the show too. But there's like no real good guys. Like you may think, honestly, I never saw like Nilfgaard as the BBEG or the big bad, because like Emir and like the Nilfgaard, they are doing bad things, but so is Northern Kingdoms. Obviously, we see that with freaking like Dijkstra, Philippa, Radovid, and Redania.
Mm-hmm.
The Scoia'tael are not great. They're basically terrorists. Like nobody is really like purely like good. The mages are doing shady shit. The Brotherhood, you know. So it's like
Yep.
everybody is a bad person in some way. But you know, Nilfgaard definitely is seen a bit more on the bad side, especially because I think they are more, and the show is really taking this hard with like the White Flame and like making it more like cult-esque. Like
True.
like saying like, you know, the White Flame saved me, and that's like what Kahira was saying when the usurper came and like enslaved people, and
Mm-hmm.
the White Flame saved me, all for the White Flame. Kill you. But he felt instant, like Kahira felt instant remorse after that. You could see, like he looked in the mirror and he saw what he did, and he just like shadowed the mirror. I love that because it's like it does add a level of empathy for the character, because you kind of feel for him. Like he's a bad guy and he's doing something bad for Nilfgaard, but you could tell immediately he regretted doing it. So
Yeah, because he, you know, he was his friend, you know,
Yeah.
his ally
Yeah.
through the Scoia'tael, you know, but
Yeah.
what Amir wants, Amir gets in Kahir's eyes.
And in the introduction, he had saved his life. Like that when they introduced
Yeah.
them in this season, like
Yeah.
it was with him saving his life. So they did a very good job of making that very emotionally wrought for Kahir in that moment. I thought that was a great scene.
yeah.
Um, I want to maybe shift topics a little bit to the fight scenes.
Oh,
I have to say,
fantastic for me.
I really, really, really enjoyed the human versus human or elf for humanoid combat. I want to talk separately about the monster fights
Yes.
because I have a kind of a separate opinion on them. But watching Geralt fight and use the signs, like you saw him use like Quen and Ard, and he was doing the pirouettes, and it was sick. I was
Oh.
so the nerd in me was like, that is totally how Geralt fights in the book,
Mhm.
and in the game too. Even like I felt very satisfied
100%.
with that. I
Yep.
don't know if you felt the same way. So okay. However, the monsters, I the what was the Striga in the first season? It's such a gold standard
Yes.
monster fight, right?
Yep.
I have a whole thing about the monsters, honestly. First
Yeah.
of all, multiple of the monsters were not. They're like just made up. Like there's so many cool monsters in the world of The Witcher. Why are we? Again, I know like the monolith bullshit is like they're creating their own monsters from the monoliths, but like the first two monsters we see is that roly poly thing.
Yes, the fucking
The Jackapace.
I wanted to talk about
The
that so badly. When
the
it rolled across the
Jackapace.
street, and I'm like, what in the Indiana Jones is going on with this roly poly ball?
Oh my! I was with. Sorry to interrupt you, Tracy. I just want to
No.
get this out because this is a one of the issues I had is Geralt's just like, you know, there's only one monster catcher I know that has a Jackapace. And I was like, ooh, a Jackapace? What's a Jackapace? I've never heard of this before. And I was expecting something grotesque from like behind the door. And then it just rolls into the hedge maze. And I was like, that's a
Yeah.
Jackapace? Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So that thing, and then the thing in episode 2, the Zimichi thing, the flesh body
The
thing.
Lemordian.
What the fuck? I'm like, what is this? I'm like, so far we've seen 2 monsters, and neither of them are anything that Vesemir would have told me about in Ghouls and Al Ghouls or any of these
Yeah.
books. Like, I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yes.
I'm like, what are these monsters?
Yeah.
And we didn't get a sense of lore behind them.
No.
Like The Witcher didn't deal with them in a lore friendly way. The only one that I really liked, and partially not because of the monster, honestly, just because it was Ciri fighting it, was when they were on the boat and that
Aishna,
that creature,
Yeah.
right? That fight I enjoyed a lot more because it was more about seeing how much Geralt trusted Ciri to take the lead
That was
on that fight.
heckin' cool.
And you saw the result of that training. Because one of my favorite things about Ciri in The Witcher is that like she has the power to do magic, and Yennefer wants to teach her magic And she's just like, nah, I just want to do Witcher shit. I just want to do Witcher shit with my friends. And like, and Geralt's like, yeah, but you don't have like you don't have the powers. And she's like, I don't give a fuck. I want to fight monsters. And I love that so much. And he's like, all right. And he trains her. And to see her fight the monster and to him let her take the lead and support her, and then she gets the killing blow was awesome.
Yes,
like
that was really cool. I loved that scene.
that was so cool. But none of the other monster fights had any value in them like that, and none of them were interesting in the sense of like, oh, this is a cool monster with lore, and they had to use their Witcher tactics, like their knowledge of monsters to destroy it. That never came across this season, and I lament that.
Yep. And going to episode 2, I think is where Geralt goes to the castle and the dungeon and stuff like that. And I was so interested to learn what that thing was. With like the heads on the walls.
Oh, that was cool.
And it's just this amalgamation of body parts. And I was like, what is this? This is amazing. This is right up my jam. I want to learn more. And I was so upset that like Geralt just cleans the floor with it. There are so many hands like pummeling him. I'm like, hasn't gotten scratched, hasn't gotten like stabbed by a nail. There's no mouths on this thing. I wanted like a fight with some gravitas, and it was just like, oh, it's dead now, and it's just this flesh thing. Oh, okay.
And I get that it's a mystery of what that is, and that there's something that they're building up to. But I would have liked him to have some kind of knowledge as a Witcher, or to have, again, to just like, oh, I understand this. This is some kind of enchantment. Like someone's messing. I need to go talk to a specialist. Or like, I don't know. There was very little of the Witcher knowledge factor.
The monster part, the monster hunting was definitely like the biggest weak point, I would say, of this first half of the season. The fights, but I agree with you both. Like the fight action was good for what it was when they had it, but like just in general, like was not a fan of any of the monsters. The only thing, just like cutting to another portion, I think this was episode 2 or 3, when Yennefer and Ciri are together in Gorspellen. This is actually something that I do like, that they did a lot of good book scenes, honestly, from Time of Contempt. And one of them is when Ciri and Yennefer go to the bank, and Yennefer is getting monies for her to enroll as a novice at Aretusa, and Ciri goes out with Fabio, and they go see the thing that is I think it's a wyvern or something, and like the guy's like, well, feast your eyes on this, and Ciri, as she's just like, again, she just loves her little Witcher knowledge, and I love seeing little, I want to be a Witcher, Ciri, in this, and she's like, that's not I forget what the monster is. She's like,
that's not a cockatrice. That's a wyvern.
Wyvern, yes, yeah. And she just like has to actually the entire crowd and fight it. I just love that they had that whole scene from the books. I thought that was really great.
I think, and that to me speaks to, I think that they did continue to do Ciri very well this season. Yes. I think she really was on point. That moment is really up there in characterizing her really well. I agree. I loved that scene. I love her. She can't help herself. I gotta do Witcher shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Tracy, to go off what you just said, is that ignites such an awesome side story for Ciri.
Yes.
Is that whole encounter with the cockatrice and the wyvern and the rats, essentially.
Yes, and so apparently they're actually going to be making another spin-off show of The Witcher that is going to be all about the rats. So they introduced Missile, who was the girl.
The coin purse.
Yep.
Is Ciri going to be in it?
I think so. I mean, she probably is, because that's a huge part of her story in the books is her with the rats.
But they have a huge history before her. Like
That's true.
They're like. So this could totally be.
I'm not sure if it's like a prequel to like who the rats are, or if it's like Ciri with the rats. I'm not sure where it's going, but they're doing basically a spin-off series.
There is enough time to do either. Like they could do
Yeah.
either version, and it would fit in the context of the Witcher story.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was good, and I like that they, at least started to introduce Missile, because it's like that's gonna be something to look out for in the future. And then that brings us to the mages, because again, similar to the books, Ciri runs into Margarita and Tisea, and then they are like getting drunk at the at the
the spa.
bathhouse,
Yeah.
and Ciri's bringing them wine and shit. Like, but there was a great scene between Yennefer and Ciri after that where they're like fighting for like the first time, and it's kind of gut wrenching, like seeing the two of them fight and like exchange words. Like Yennefer is basically saying like, you need to be this, like I had to be something that like I didn't want to be, or this part of myself that I didn't have to be, but you have to do that now. She's trying to teach her a lesson. Like Yennefer is like the tough love aspect for Ciri, and Geralt is a bit more soft in a lot of ways.
And protective.
In some ways,
Yeah. So I really liked
Which
that
is funny
scene.
when, take your daughter to kill Monster Day,
Yeah, this is true.
Oh, he's not soft with her in that sense, but like, yeah, when it comes to like, if Ciri's like, I don't want to do it, Geralt will be like, all right, we'll kill whoever tries to make you do it,
Yep.
And like, that's like Geralt's answer.
Yep.
I mean, he does, he does come around and want her to go to Aretusa.
Yes.
I mean, I'm oversimplifying. Like, he's not that one dimensional, but
Yeah.
What was your favorite episode of the first half?
I probably would say, I'm trying to remember what happened in 4. So I did really like the last episode, the
Agreed, yeah.
Yeah, I think I really liked, I will say that I think I just played a thing and then everybody got to hear it because I was re-pulling up the episode list on Netflix. I'm like, what was the 4th episode? I really liked the way the one thing that the Witcher show I feel like tries to experiment with things and they don't always do it well. Like season 1, they did like the weird timeline shit that like everybody complained about and was really confusing. Yep. I would say episode 5, they did that like, we're gonna repeat the entire night with additional hints. Like it was a cool idea and concept, but just not executed well.
Yeah.
100% agree.
Yes,
not all
agreed.
of it needed to be like.
It was
some
a
of
little
it was
slow. Yeah, I was like, we've already seen this scene. We don't need to see it again. Let's move on.
Yeah.
So the concept was what they see versus what actually happened, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of it was did not really neatly fit. Like you didn't really need to show it twice. Like it didn't add anything.
No.
It didn't feel like it was like, that was really something that needed to be hidden to give this effect.
And not only twice, but like 3 or 4 times they come back to like certain conversations. And also it's really, you lose kind of the agency when the episode starts with Geralt and Yennefer in bed together. So you kind of just like, oh, this is after the party.
Yeah.
Like everything kind of goes okay.
Everything goes well.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that said, this was still one of my favorite episodes.
I think
might
it
still
was.
be my
Episode
favorite
5,
episode
yes,
of.
Yes, I think episode 5 was for me as well.
I kept like hearing the same song, the all is not as it seems. And I was like, how many times are we going to hear that?
This is another example, though, of like there were so many heavy-handed moments in this show. Like, really, the bard is gonna sing "All Is Not As It Seems" on repeat, and we're gonna keep doing that. Like, we get it, we get it. There are nefarious plans. People are doing schemes. Like, we get it. Very inappropriate song to be singing at your conclave of mages where we're all trying to show unity. But I get it narratively why that fits.
there's
some shady shit going on in the background,
Yeah. Oh my God. It's interesting to me that because I was watching it and obviously the 3 of us have read the book, so we know what's going to happen. And I was watching it unfold as like, how is this going to happen? How are they're slowly revealing that, and it's very much, again, like, I think about my dad and his wife because they've been watching The Witcher a lot, and they haven't read the books, but they've been enjoying the show for what it is, and I'm picturing them watching it because if they're watching it and they haven't read the books, like, do they think Stregobor is like, he's like a huge red herring of like the bad guy, and it's like, I wonder if like a person watching this like thinks of like, okay, well, it's definitely Stregobor. He's the baddie. We're gonna
slimy bitch,
he's a slimy bitch. Like, we're gonna nail Stregobor. We're gonna get him. And like, there's clearly somebody else behind the scenes plotting things.
Yep.
Yeah.
So talking about that reveal, I actually think they did a decent job with that. That's one of those ones that's hard to translate from book to visual media, right? That in the book, that reveal is slow, and when it happens, it's a very good reveal. I think they do a very good job of it in the books. It doesn't have the same impact in the show. I'm not gonna pretend that it does, but it's also very hard to do in the same way. Like that kind of surprise of, okay, this character is the whole in love with Vilgefortz, and the fact that they can't speak, and figuring out that this person was involved in the whole plot to find Ciri.
Because like
that,
like Lydia, I feel like Lydia has a bigger role in the books than the show. Like, Lydia has like a couple of scenes, and if you're not really paying attention, you're like, who is this chick? Like, what's her whole deal? Like, I think like us, we know Lydia, who the character is, and we have that knowledge. But like, I'm thinking about somebody who doesn't know anything about this, and they're like, who is this Lydia chick, and like, what's her whole deal? You know?
Yeah, you get the illusion breaks for a second, and you see like her decomposing kind of jaw, and you're just kind of like, oh, what's going on here? Like, who is this person? And I think that also kind of bothered me when they introduced Kiera Metz. And they're like, oh, Kiera makes the best the best portals in all of like Aretuza. Like, any mage, Kiera's portals are like top tier. And I was kind of like, okay, like I know that, but like, you're introducing this huge sorceress,
right?
And then it's just like gone, and it's like, okay, well, I guess we'll have to see more of that.
I just feel like, yes, for some people it could be probably very hard to follow, like,
because they don't have the easiest names either.
No.
That is kind of how it is in the books, though. There's just there are these, because they all have history with each other. You know, there oftentimes we are meeting characters who, especially with the mages, right? Like, oh, they've known each other for 50 years. They've known each other for 60, 80 years, right? So they come into these storylines, they come and they go. It is kind of hard to follow in the books also sometimes. Having been introduced to this world via the games and then the books and then the show, it is in my head, I get confused all the time with those aspects. You know, there's a lot of little characters. Sometimes I forget what was introduced in the games versus what's actually in the books.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I will say, yes, like episode 5, I really liked, especially because it's just also nice to see all these characters we've been following kind of interact with each other. Like, some for the first time, like Vilgefortz, and like interacting with Geralt, like Istrid and Geralt, like meeting for the first time. Like, so many of these characters, and like all of the, like Philippa's there, like everybody just.
Sabrina.
Oh God, Sabrina! Like,
I love that in that scene in the book. I love when they
him.
I love that all the witches. I love that all the witches just want Geralt.
Yeah.
And he's just like,
yeah.
He doesn't like.
Yeah.
He has just this disdain for a lot of them.
Yeah.
I think I remember in the book they mention that when like Sabrina goes and like touches his arm and feels like this like tingling sensation, and she's like, oh, that must be why Yennefer is so into Geralt. He must be really awesome in bed because his skin makes me tingle.
Yeah, I remember that. I do remember that. Oh my god. There was even things about like I think the caviar being fake and like the orgasm part. Yeah.
The aphrodisiac in the
Yes.
wine. Yeah.
Yeah, that was all like little small. I think that was all in Time of Contempt. So I was like, oh, look at that. But yeah, oh my god, yeah, it was good. I really liked seeing them all like interact with each
Yes,
other.
I think episode 5 was really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah.
Not a fan of how they ended part 1 though. I felt like they didn't know
Yeah.
like how to properly split the seasons into two. Because that ending just I was kind of like, oh, that's it for a break ending. Oh,
If they
okay.
hadn't replayed episode 5 3 times, they would have had time to finish what we all
Yes.
thought was going to happen
Yes.
at the end of that
Yes.
episode, which we
Yes.
can't talk about because that is a major spoiler.
Yes.
So,
I know.
yeah.
I know. And
But it will be a good intro to the second half.
That's true.
Right?
Less than a month.
That's true.
Month, so.
At least like the show, like it's broken up pretty closely to each other. Like I still don't understand Netflix's full reason other than like money, I guess, for breaking up the 2 seasons rather than how they've done it previously. Whatever, like.
Gotta make sure
I
you're
think
subbed for
binge
more than
watching
2
is
months,
not
you
as
know?
good for keeping the conversation going,
Yeah.
and they can't go back on it because now that's what they do is they drop chunks of shows, and this is the only compromise they can make. But that way we'll get to talk about it again when
Yeah.
season 2, when the part 2 comes out.
We'll be
When
here
we have
like
another
next
video.
month to do another talks on part 2.
Right before Gen Con. you
Yeah.
know?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So.
Um,
Yeah. What's yeah.
I want to talk about one other thing. I think
Yes.
that's one other thing on my list. I'm sure there's plenty more we could talk about, but there's something that we didn't touch on yet, which is the elf storyline, Dolbothana,
Yeah.
Francesca, which is,
yeah.
by the way, the least elf name I've ever heard
Francesca
in my
Finderbear.
life.
I know. I hate.
Francesca
Yeah.
Finderbear.
I love the
elf.
character in the book. I hate the name. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a show problem. That is in the book.
Yes.
But I am a big fan of the elf lore in The Witcher.
Yes.
I love this concept of the conjunction of. This is not spoilers because now they've talked about this in the show enough, right? But I'll try to keep it vague because it's kind of vague in the show. But this idea of the conjunction of spheres, that the elves are really here first, and the humans learned their magic from them. The elves did not expect the humans to multiply as they did, and the elves have problems with
Making
more
elves.
making new
Yeah.
elves. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this dynamic, this element that puts the elves, now they're in this downtrodden position. The Scoia'tael are, yes, they're terrorists, but like look at what they're up against and what they're fighting. Like they are a very sympathetic cause, I think,
Yes.
by any means. Even the elves that are under Francesca, that are less guerrilla, that are trying to do something more official, they still have this very anti-human sentiment that you sort of like, I get it, like you're not wrong. I am very excited to see where that storyline expands to.
Yes. They definitely took a back seat in this first half, the whole elf plotline, because the elf plotline was pretty huge in season 2. That was like one of the only like redeeming things to me about season 2 was like that the elves finally are getting some screen time.
Screen time, yeah.
Yeah, but they didn't really in this first half. But I think in the second half we'll see more of like what happens with Francesca and Philavandrel.
Once the shit hits the fan for everyone.
Yep, exactly. So, but Francesca was at Thaned.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm kind of sad. Like I like the Francesca in this show. I love Francesca in the books because like she's just very like she's described as like the most beautiful sorceress, the most beautiful elf. Like she's like super beautiful, and like I always see her as kind of like stuck up and like and very much like following the play. I like this Francesca though. She's a bit more relatable, like, and you kind of
She doesn't mind getting her hands dirty a little bit.
yes, yeah. But
Is it okay to talk a little bit about the lore of, like, I don't know, of Francesca? Like, is that something that I don't know if that, because I'm confused about. I'm not sure if this was relayed in the
In
show. I don't remember if this was talked about in season 2, but like, for example, like Francesca, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Maybe you can
Put a
bleep
little
it later.
spoiler
if you don't want to.
spoilers.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, maybe. But Francesca has a connection to Sherrowed, right? Like she was there. She has a long history
Yeah.
as an elf in this land,
Mhm.
right? She is royalty. Uh, I think that aspect about who she is and what she's trying to do, in some ways I am enjoying very much exploring. I think they've actually done more with her character in the show than they have
Yes.
in the books. uh and I that's another, to me, that's a positive. I'm a big fan of this plot line. I think that they're doing a good job of making me emote with her. And I don't remember if they talked about this history with her, but I hope they do more of that, because I think this goes to give her character depth and make you understand really why she's doing what she's doing. And I think the writers are very aware of this. I think it comes across even if they haven't explicitly said all of this yet.
Right. Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Haven't really thought about it that way, but
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, okay. Any final thoughts on the show as a whole? Any other like standout scenes or moments? For me, my last things that like I really liked, my standout things was, first of all, just in general, I loved Ciri's relationship with multiple people. Ciri and Geralt, I loved their dynamic. I loved them being more witchery. Ciri calling out like witchery things. She's like, it's an Aishna because blah 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 blah, and Geralt's like, yeah, well,
Because of the bubbles.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Just Siri in general.
Ciri in
Just
general,
Siri was just
Ciri, like
awesome.
Yennefer and Ciri were great. And then even Jaskier and Ciri, like them having like when Jaskier had to like babysit her, and they
Yeah.
were like playing games. I'm like, oh, this is a cute. And like when
And
Geralt,
she's
I did
in
like
bed.
that.
yeah,
She's in bed
it's so
playing cards with
cute.
him.
I thought it was
Yeah.
so cute. And that
And
moment,
beating him, I love that.
also the moment where Geralt and Yennefer are like talking and making up, and the two of them are watching from afar and they're making
they're
up
narrating
lies.
it.
I thought that
Yep.
was such a cute scene.
Oh yeah, that was
Yes.
really good.
That
I
was-
loved that.
Yeah.
Super
That
cute.
was really good.
I really love those scenes. So like even like Jaskier and Ciri's like relationship, love seeing all of the people, all of the main characters interact with Ciri. And then also Ciri, just the one scene with the Wild Hunt was like my favorite scene because it's one of my favorite scenes in the books. And I was like, yes! I was like pointing at the screen. I was like, they're saying the lines. They're doing it. I was just so happy. Like that, it's so bone chilling. Like seeing these spectral Wild Hunt riders calling to Ciri, like, join our procession. Be gone. You are corpses. Yes, we are corpses, but you are death. Like I love, like that's some of my favorite writing from Andrzej Sapkowski. And I was like, yes, it's in the show. So that to me was like the uptick and upturn of the show for me. I was like, okay, I'm cool with this now.
Yep.
So those are all my standout scenes.
Oh man, it's hard because we talked about, I think, most of the standout scenes already. Maybe something overall. Maybe this doesn't only apply to season 3, but something that I think is an improvement in the show and the game. I think the show and the game both do this, I think, better than the book. But I do really think that Geralt is written very well. I really like how he comes across. I like his dialogue. I think that he had a lot of great lines in this season. In the books, it's kind of funny. He's kind of a chatty Cathy, you know? He likes to, he talks a lot more in the
Yes.
books. He's got a lot more to say. And while he does say a lot of the same types of things and he has the same kind of sarcastic wit, there is something to be said about how many times they cut to Geralt and he just goes,
Yeah.
he just makes a face. That is just so much better than him saying anything, and his lines are so much more choice. And I think the show really knocks Geralt out of the park. I am such a huge fan of how they write him and how Henry Cavill plays him. And without going on to a sidetrack on this conversation, I know we don't want to talk about this, but I have no idea what it's gonna be like when
Yeah.
Liam Hemsworth
Yep.
takes over this
Yep.
role. Like
Yeah.
I just can't even imagine at this point.
Yeah.
So we'll just have to see.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I like Bijan said, I think we talked about kind of all of our favorite scenes already, but I really enjoyed just like the Eichna fight on the boat on the
Yes.
ferry. That was awesome. And in series like, yes, the weak spot is the soft part on the top of its head, and Garrett just looks at her and he's like, that's right. Like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah. And the other bards besides Dandelion,
Oh, yeah.
that whole banter was really fun. And yeah, there's a lot of good ones. But yeah, I think I talked about all mine, to be honest. So
Yeah. I think that's really like everything for the season.
this part,
This
not this
part,
season. Yeah,
the part
yes.
1 of season 3.
Fist Tech. They had Fist
Oh,
Tech.
Fist
They had
Tech.
Fist
right,
Tech in there.
yes.
There was
Like,
there was Fist Tech?
Oh
the,
yeah,
one of the animal handlers,
the monster hunter.
Was
the
that what
monster
they
trapper.
opened? That's
Yeah.
what that was. Oh my
he was
god!
taking the snuff ring. My wife was like, "Did he just do a bump out of his
I
ring?"
didn't
And I
even
was like,
notice
"Oh,
that.
yeah,
Holy
Yeah.
shit!
And then when they first meet Kira Metz, he offers some to Yennefer. He's like, "You want a bump?"
Oh
Yeah.
my god! What the fuck? Wow, that went way over my head. The me,
Yeah,
the
there
non
were other moments like that where I was like, good attention to detail.
I
The
didn't
lore
even
nerd
know.
in
Oh
me is
shit!
satisfied.
Damn. Okay.
And then Riance pays the guy in Fist Tech.
Fist tag. Oh
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay, well, I went over my head. Cool. That's cool.
So
Yeah. Overall, you know what? Let's just say this. Overall, now that we've talked about it and gone through it, I did actually enjoy the season. I know there were I know we've talked about a lot of the negative things, but
Yeah.
my overall takeaway was I enjoyed these characters. I enjoyed a lot of the moments in the show. I enjoyed that we're kind of on track. I mean, the book nerd in me
Yes.
is enjoying that
We're back on the rails,
track
honestly.
on
Yeah.
of the
We're-
story.
It went off the rails this season. We're back on the rails for the most part, and
yeah,
that's the
it was
important thing.
leaning for a second, but
Yeah.
now we're back on.
Yeah.
And while I do hope that we get some more, Witcher moments, and I mean, this is something that is a problem in the books as well, and I'm not going to fault them for not including more of that in the adaptation when there's just so much story that they need to get through.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm looking forward to the second half.
Same.
Yeah, I am also looking forward to it. Who knows? I don't know. I hope we come back to the end of part 2 of season 3 with a similar sentiment. But again, we don't know. Like, and also, like, allegedly from what I've read, like, they're trying to incorporate like something in the show and like lore reasons for the change in actors. That's what I've allegedly heard, which scares me.
Oh no!
I know.
What is
So
that
that's
gonna
why
be?
I'm scared that the second half is gonna like go completely downhill if they're gonna do some weird shit. But maybe I don't know. I'm not gonna go too deep into like theorizing of what it's gonna happen. But like we'll see, I guess. But I just hope that we come back in a month happy.
He's gonna be cursed by a hag forever to
God,
look like
no.
Liam Hemsworth.
Please, God.
man.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks both for talking and about it. I feel like this is a much better format to like get thoughts out there. So I enjoy just talking about it with friends. It makes
Likewise,
it, yeah.
It
So
was awesome.
we'll be back for part 2, and we'll have our more discussions to come on what's going to happen for season 3. Until then, goodbye, everybody. We will see you.
Take care, everyone. See you in a couple weeks.
All is not as it
Was it
seems.
seems.